In Switzerland, there is essentially 8 kinds of residence permits for people that are living here but that are not Swiss citizens. In this video, we will have a look at what those permits are, what their main characteristics are, and their main differences. First, we'll look at the permit that is the closest to the Swiss citizenship, and that is the C settlement permit. The C settlement permit grants a person without the Swiss citizenship an unlimited right of residence in Switzerland. Holders of a Swiss residence permit have the same rights and obligations as Swiss people, except for one exception. They don't have the political rights. That means they do not have the right to vote or to participate in elections on a federal level. However, there are some exceptions to this rule on a more local level. To obtain a C settlement permit, it usually requires 10 years of residence in Switzerland. Once obtained though, the permit is granted for an indefinite period of time, although it does need to be renewed every few years. There are only a few exceptions to this rule when a C settlement permit can be granted after 5 years already. One of these exceptions is if somebody is living in Switzerland and if he or she is married to a Swiss citizen. The next Swiss residence permit that comes with a lot of rights attached to it is the C permit. The C residence permit is intended for family members of intergovernmental officials such as diplomats and for members of foreign representations. It can be obtained by them and by their children up to the age of 25. The purpose of this permit is to facilitate its members and their families access to the Swiss labor market. The clue here is that the validity of the permit is linked to the duration of the function of the main holder. The next very common permit that non-Swiss citizens living in Switzerland have is the B residence permit. B residence permit holders are foreigners that are living in Switzerland for a longer period of time with or without working here. The most common reasons for people to have a B residence permit in Switzerland is because of their job here, because they are married to a Swiss citizen, or because they study in the country. This kind of residence permit is valid for 5 years for people coming from the EU or coming from an EFTA country. For nationals coming from another country outside of the EU-EFTA area, the B residence permit is valid for 1 year only before it needs to be renewed for another year. A big difference to the C settlement permit that we talked about before is that with the B residence permit, people are assigned to a certain canton, meaning a certain state in Switzerland. If they want to move out of the state, they have to ask for permission beforehand, which technically can of course be denied. Depending on the reason why the permit was issued, there is also a mandatory commitment to the employer or to the job for which the permit was initially issued. The next permit to look at is the L short stay permit. Holders of this permit are short-term foreign nationals that are staying in Switzerland for only a limited period of time, usually no longer than for 1 year, for a specific purpose. This permit is valid for a maximum of 364 days according to the duration of the employment contract that the person has or according to the stay of the applicant. But it can, in some cases, be extended to up to 2 years. Once a short-time L residence permit has expired, it can only be issued again after a reasonable interruption of the stay in Switzerland. One thing to pay attention to with an L short-term residence permit is that a change of jobs is only possible for important reasons. What those important reasons are is clearly defined by the law and it is very strictly regulated. So for most holders of this permit, a change of jobs is not possible without at the same time losing their permit. Another Swiss residence permit is the cross-border commuter permit G. Cross-border commuters are nationals who live in a border zone of Switzerland and who have their foreign residence there, but they work in Switzerland. This therefore concerns citizens of Germany, France, Italy, Austria and Liechtenstein. Special about this kind of residence permit is that cross-border commuters must return to their foreign residence at least once a week. This permit is usually valid for 5 years provided that there is an employment contract that is valid at least for 1 year. The next permit is the F permit for provisionally admitted foreigners. Temporarily admitted people are people that have been expelled from Switzerland, but the enforcement of the expulsion has proven to be inadmissible, unreasonable or impossible. That means an expulsion of this person would either result in a violation of international law, in a severe danger to the foreigner, or it is simply impossible due to other expulsion-related issues. Temporary admission and obtaining an F permit is not the same as obtaining a residence permit in Switzerland. It is only a temporary measure that can be ordered for 12 months. After these 12 months, it can and must be renewed for another 12 months. In daily life, an F permit is often associated with a lot of complications. People with the F permit are, for instance, only allowed to travel outside of the country, even within the EU area, under very strict conditions. And although they are allowed to work in Switzerland, if you only have a temporary admission in a country, it is often a big obstacle when it comes to actually finding a job. In addition to that, people with an F permit often end up having this kind of residence status for a very long time, until at some point they might be able to change it and get an actual residence permit here. Another permit in Switzerland is the permit N for asylum seekers. Asylum seekers are people who applied for asylum in Switzerland but whose asylum procedure is still pending. During that time, they are not allowed to have any kind of work or employment in Switzerland. But unlike people with an F permit, they are allowed to leave the country as long as they don't travel back to their country of origin, because that would most likely result in them not being granted asylum here. And finally, last but not least, we have the S residence permit for foreigners that are coming to Switzerland for temporary protection. This permit allows people to take temporary residence in Switzerland and to work here. This special permit was only very recently used for the first time in Switzerland when the Ukraine war started. Ukrainian citizens were, as a consequence, allowed to come to Switzerland quickly and easily and to get permission to work here. As this permit is only for temporary protection, it will end at some point. But since that was the very first time that the S permit was introduced and granted, the requirements for revoking it are most likely not yet clearly defined. Since that was the 8th and last residence permit in Switzerland, we're getting to the end of today's video. If you have any kind of questions about the residence permits I mentioned, or any other questions related to this topic, leave a comment in the comment section down below and I'll get back to you. Other than that, I hope that you found the information that I shared with you in this video helpful, and if so, make sure to give it a thumbs up. As always, thank you all for watching, and I hope to be talking to you again soon.